what you want to know.
What's going on, people? Myke C-Town here with another episode of What Do You Want to Know, where you ask your question. If I like your question, I answer your question on camera. So today's question comes from Donovan R. And Donovan asks, what are your thoughts on this cancel culture which has been sweeping the world, more specifically regarding minor things such as offensive jokes or tweets from someone's past? I personally think it's ridiculous, but I'm curious about your opinion. So this seems to be the talk of the town lately, mainly because a lot of comedians have been coming out doing specials or whatever where they drop a lot of offensive jokes and they get dinged for it. And I used to hear how PC culture was the boogeyman. You know, PC culture is gonna get you. You can't say nothing these days because PC culture, they're gonna get them. Now it's cancel culture. But yeah, so what is cancel culture? The ever-trustworthy Wikipedia defines cancel culture as a form of boycott in which someone, usually a celebrity, who has shared a questionable or unpopular opinion or has had behavior that is perceived to be offensive called out on social media is completely boycotted by many fans, often leading to massive declines in celebrities' careers and fan base. So my opinion on the matter is a bit mixed. You know, on one hand, I say freedom of speech isn't freedom from consequence. I've said this a million times, meaning that you can say what you want, but don't cry when there are ramifications to your statements. The people who always want to make this a freedom of speech issue, first off, they never understand what freedom of speech actually is, meaning they think that freedom of speech is a one-way street, you know, meaning someone can say something that's deemed fucked up and no one is allowed to say anything about that statement except for those who actually agree with the statement. And it's a really weird stance to me, and it kind of just equates to a person who really doesn't believe in free speech at all. Look, I think comedians, politicians, whoever, they all have the right to say anything they want, no matter how disgusting or repulsive it is. But the people who disagree with it also have the right to voice disapproval. And if those voices get loud enough to the point where they start to affect the person's livelihood, then whose fault is that? You know, remember when Roseanne Barr said that weird ass racist Planet of the Apes statement about Valerie Jarrett? That's her right, but she's not automatically absolved from any criticism. You know, when a gang of people speak up about the things that she said and this causes her to have problems financially, including her show getting canceled, I'm sorry, I just can't force myself to give a shit. Now, my problem with this whole thing is it doesn't always leave room for discussion or change, and that just seems to be pointless to me. So the first issue is canceling someone doesn't remove the pain or the trauma from their actions or statements. It may only prevent that person from doing it again, or maybe it shows others what can happen if they repeat this problematic behavior. But the problem I have with it is the people themselves are removed from the conversation. You know, they're talked at or about instead of being talked to. So that only does a certain amount of good, but I feel like a dialogue needs to be opened up with that person. Get their side of the story, present the reason why their stance is problematic, and maybe go from there. If the person doesn't agree with you, fine. Pull your support in whatever manner you feel necessary. This also depends on the level of offense, in my personal opinion. You know, not all boycotts are created equal. It should be a case-by-case or issue-by-issue basis. Rapist reform, it's a thing, but personally, I'm not trying to have shit to do with you ever if you've done something like that. You know, Brock Turner can go fuck himself forever. But this is just a personal thing, and I think a larger conversation could easily be had around this. I'm just not finna do it. Furthermore, if someone said something racist 7 years ago, I'm not gonna go to bat saying that this person is a current racist and therefore I won't support them, and anyone who doesn't support racism should pull their support forever. No, I feel like a degree of investigation needs to be done when it comes to that kind of thing, and I think that's something that's always missed. Someone will pull up something that a person said back in 1999 that contained a racist joke and say that that person 20 years later is still a current proven racist. No, that's not the way the world works, or at least that's not the way it should work. Some people literally fuck up, they learn from their fuck ups, and they grow to be better people. Things that may not happen if society at large turns their back on them forever and says that they want nothing else to do with them. That's where sometimes these things feel more like a self-congratulatory public circle jerk for the cancelers, more of a look what we did kind of bullying thing, more than it comes across as a group of people trying to get the concerns of a certain marginalized group heard. And I say this from personal experience because, you know, when I was younger, I said plenty of dumb shit that I didn't think at all was bigoted in any way. I was still considering myself some sort of ally while making comments that didn't align with being an ally. Shit, not even that long ago on Dead in Hip Hop, I've said shit that I thought was a joke or lighthearted. No, I won't name the videos. But there's a possibility that someone could stumble upon those videos, not knowing anything about me, completely miss the videos where I've publicly apologized for saying those things, and they could just decide that I'm a bigot and start a hashtag cancel ctown campaign. You know, now would that be fair? I guess it depends on who you ask, but if you're asking me, someone who I feel like has grown a lot in the past few years, thanks to conversations that I've had with a lot of you guys and with other people, no, I don't think it would be fair. If I was canceled back then when I made these dumb comments without being given the opportunity to explain that I was being a dipshit or to apologize, then how would that help me or anyone like me? And if I was canceled now for shit that I said in the past, what good would that do when I truly feel like I can help other people who were like me by telling them that I've learned from my mistakes and I'm trying to do better by listening to the people that I've hurt, even if it was a purposeful hurt or an unintentional hurt? And before you guys get all excited, yes, I made some dumb statements. I never called anyone a slur or implied any sort of social inequality. I'm referring to using phrases and not understanding their weight. For instance, I had a video where a kid was upset because he didn't grow up with his father and he didn't feel like he was masculine, and people at school were picking on him saying he wasn't masculine. And I explained that masculinity is a silly concept in general, and I told him that his masculinity had nothing to do with him being a man. Those things are not synonymous. And I guess I got too excited. I made the comment of, if you have a dick, then you're a man, so don't worry about these people teasing you, saying that you're not. I honestly was not even remotely considering that trans people would take offense to that comment, but I got roasted, man. Even though I've made plenty of statements showing support for the LGBT community, some folks took that one statement, assumed the worst, and blasted me, telling people to unsub, you know, calling me all kinds of, you're a bigot, you're a transphobe, this and that. Thankfully, I was given the chance to explain that that's not what I meant. And also, thankfully, I had a lot of people that have watched my videos and could tell that that's not what I meant, and they came to bat for me. And since then, I've come to understand the weight of words, and I try to think a bit more about what I say before I say it. Yeah, so was that situation positive overall? Again, it depends on who you ask, but for me, yes and no. I feel like the discussions that came from it were great. The arguments and attempts to cancel me were not. This is where that research and dialogue part that I mentioned earlier would have come in handy. And that's not the only time this has happened. I've discussed things like this on my channel before, but I also take responsibility for the actual fuck ups that I make. You know, I constantly ask people to let me know if I say something that they find offensive. Then I can personally decide if that's something that I need to change. But I'm really not out here trying to piss people off, man. You know, it's not my MO. But I am not taking my personal situation and painting everyone with that brush. You know, some people deserve to have your support pulled if they do or say things repeatedly that you don't agree with morally, even if they do apologize. Because I feel like an apology without tangible change is bullshit. You know, it's like it's emotional manipulation, you know, and nobody needs that. But again, a lot of this stuff is up to you, the individual. If you think that whatever a person did is worth you pulling your support, then do it. The problem comes in when this whole groupthink sheeple shit enters the conversation and people get more excited about the drama than they actually do about shifting the problematic narrative to something better. I think there's a lesson here about the power people have when they unify over a certain subject or cause, but there's also a lesson in the responsibility that those people have to understand the dangers of having that power go unchecked. So you asked my thoughts on it. I assume you mean, do I think if it's good or bad? And I feel that's a very convoluted and complicated question. I think that when someone who has a lot of influence says something or does something that you don't agree with, you have every right to call them out and voice your opinion on it. But at the same time, I think it's super important to consider refraining from the instant mob mentality and instead of immediately canceling them, try to educate them. Especially if this is a first offense situation. But then you also have to understand that not everyone is going to agree with your ideas of social equality. And you should be ready to walk away from someone or something if you can't reconcile your support for them with your own moral sensibilities. And we also need to understand that there's a world outside of Twitter, and sometimes we should take advantage of that fact and just take our asses outside. I can already smell the grease from the pizza pockets on the fingertips of the basement-dwelling dorks typing out how everyone's offended by everything, which is just not true, and it's stupid, and it only comes from people who, for whatever reason, enjoy offensive statements and want to throw out these exaggeratory, hyperbolic statements that don't really mean anything because it's easier to argue these imaginary statements and these imaginary situations than it is to actually confront the issue with the actual statements being made. The same dorks who act like this is just a liberal thing, you know, as if conservatives don't do this too. You know, does anybody not remember the Nike situation or the Kellogg's situation, or how about the Keurig situation? So yeah, Whiffendor, Warrior of the Snow 89, chill out. You're not gonna get any fucking hit points by posting that stupid shit, so try something new or just don't say anything at all. Both of those options work just fine for me. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down there. Let's have hopefully a civil discussion about this. If I get canceled, oh well. I'll just have to leave this YouTube shit and go back to stripping or something. But yeah, that's it. As usual, thank you for living, thank you for loving, thank you for being you, and I'll see you guys next time. All right? Peace out, boy.